allowed this mediation. Of course, the government and the MEA have dismissed these claims multiple times, asserting that negotiations occurred solely through direct military channels between India and Pakistan and that trade was never really an issue. But that hasn't sufficed. Now, on the sidelines of the G7 summit, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump held a telephonic conversation in which Indian PM told the US President directly that once his deputy Vance called to alert India that Pakistan will be attacking them in retaliation, India had made it clear, bring it on. And it is after that May 10 strikes that incapacitated Pakistani defences that they asked for a ceasefire. Prime Minister also asserted that during this phone call with Vance, there was no discussion on trade. This has been said by the Indian government as a clear rebuff to US claims, but also, of course, to satisfy domestic demands. Will the opposition let it rest now? That remains to be seen. But what is also of great interest in India is in USA's recent mollycoddling of Pakistan with their Chief of Army Staff's visit to the White House, which brings us to the question that Indians have been asking again and again and again, just how much can India rely on the US of A? First up, let's break down the 35-minute phone call between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Donald Trump. Now, Prime Minister told Trump that no talks on trade were held as far as his conversation with JD Vance is concerned. So, one wonders really where this assertion that trade was used as some sort of a tool even comes from. I hope, certainly, and India would be hoping that Donald Trump is not going to keep making these claims going forward. The Prime Minister also said that no talks were held with America on mediation with Pakistan. And remember, our delegations going overseas have already talked about how one country talking to both countries while they are engaged in a conflict is not mediation. Prime Minister also said that the ceasefire was initiated solely at Pakistan's request and behest, that India hasn't, doesn't and will not accept any mediation as far as the issue of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. He also told Trump that there is complete political consensus on this mediation issue in India. The phone call comes at a time when President Trump is hosting Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir, as I said, and that has raised several questions as to why the Donald Trump administration is mollycoddling this failed marshal. Trump business and crypto interests are coinciding, remember, with Pakistan's leaders, including Munir, offering lucrative deals to a cryptocurrency company. There is World Liberty Financial, owned by Trump's sons. So this clear conflict of interest has come to light. Defense contractors are keen to tap into Pakistan's military procurement market, which is currently dominated by China. They also want to reduce China's economic influence in the region. We understand that, but is this the way to go forward? Pakistan recently became the co-chair of UN Security Council's Counter-Terrorism Committee. Trump may see Munir as a useful partner for future regional coordination, especially if he plans a hawkish foreign policy comeback. Attempt is also to use, as always has been, to use Pakistan as some sort of a bargaining chip against India as friction remains, particularly, let's say, even on trade as we speak, transfer of technology. And this has been not just USA's, but the West's way of conducting a balancing act between India and Pakistan. Let's also understand exactly what the West has been doing as far as Pakistan is concerned, how it's been appeasing Pakistan, and God only knows why. Remember, the World Bank is on the verge of approving a $20 billion partnership for 10 years. International Monetary Fund in May this year itself, despite the Pahalgam attack, had given $1 billion under a $7 billion stabilization package and a $1.4 billion for climate resilience program. UN Security Council, as I said, appointed Pakistan of all countries in the world as vice chair of UNSC counter-terrorism panel, knowing fully well that this is the same country and government and army that has actually even defeated US and other countries' plans to defeat terrorism and even the Taliban in Afghanistan. US has granted, of course, Trump has approved $397 million for Pakistan to sustain an F-16 jets. The Financial Action Task Force in October 2022 removed Pakistan from that grey list despite its failure to meet terror funding commitments. And the European Union, even in April 2023, featured Pakistan in counter-terrorism dialogue. It really baffles the mind of whether the West thinks that the rest of the world is a fool and has close their eyes and are not able to understand exactly what is going on here. But at this G7 summit, which the Prime Minister was attending, he sent out a stern message on this issue. He said there is no place for double standards on terrorism, which the West has been known for a very long time. For global peace and prosperity, our thoughts must be clear. If any nation supports terror, it will have to pay a price. And it shouldn't depend on what is convenient for Western countries. He also said we are quick to impose all kinds of sanctions when we feel it serves us. But nations, and this was a direct link to Pakistan, that openly support terrorism are rewarded. That's really the problem today. He also mentioned that Pahalgam attack was an attack on the soul and dignity of every Indian. It was an attack on the entire humanity. And therefore, India stands firm as far as its actions are concerned. But the question that does come to our mind is, even as India has called out these claims that Trump has made, and we're seeing shades of this also emerging as far as recent conflicts in Iran, for example, are concerned, his skirmishes with other G7 leaders are concerned. The question though is, can India rely on America? How much can it rely on America? Or has a time come to really be more pragmatic about this relationship?
प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को स्पष्ट रूप से कहा कि इस पूरे घटनाक्रम के दौरान कभी भी किसी भी स्तर पर भारत अमेरिका ट्रेड डील या अमेरिका द्वारा भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच मध्यस्थता जैसे विषयों पर बात नहीं हुई थी। सैन्य कार्रवाई रोकने की बात सीधे भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच दोनों सेनाओं की एग्जिस्टिंग चैनल्स के माध्यम से हुई थी और पाकिस्तान के ही आग्रह पर हुई थी।
वो जानकारी हमें मिली है, पर मेरा एक ही सवाल है कि राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का बयान बिल्कुल अलग है। वो अलग है, ठीक है, अलग अलग देश अलग अलग बयान दे सकते हैं, पर हमारे प्रधानमंत्री विपक्ष के नेताओं से बातचीत से क्यों भाग रहे हैं? क्यों सर्वदलीय बैठक नहीं बुलाते?
बयान एक ऐसे राजनीतिक दल से आ रहे हैं जिनका झूठ प्रतिदिन सामने आता है।
Let's go across to our guest joining us, RP Singh, national spokesperson of the BJP, Mahima Singh from the Congress party with us, Major General Bishambar Dayal is a defence expert and strategic affairs expert, Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat, all with us. I do thank you all for your time. Mahima Singh, I begin with you. The Congress party has been at the forefront of putting the centre in dock as far as Donald Trump's claims are concerned. Are you satisfied now?
Jai Hind, Shivani, I was in fact listening to the Foreign Secretary very carefully. And then, of course, we have gone through the President Trump's readout on the White House's website. And as Mr. Jairam Ramesh, our General Secretary in charge communications, a very senior leader of the Congress party, has spoken with utmost responsibility and questioned, why doesn't the Prime Minister talk to the opposition leaders? Why is the Prime Minister's narrative so different than what the White House is saying? The White House is saying that the call was all about trade discussions. In fact, if you haven't read it out, let me just read out, the last highlighting lines to you. Just a minute, Shivani. You must hear this out. They say both leaders emphasized their commitment to advance the US-India strategic partnership and the Indo-Pacific Quad partnership with India hosting Quad leaders for the first time later this year. Now, President Trump left the G7 summit one day early than he was scheduled to. There he hosting Asim Munir, the Field Marshal of Pakistan, over a lunch. The very Field Marshal who gave provocative comments just ahead of the 22nd April Pahalgam attack. And here we have a Prime Minister giving an entirely dubious narrative, countering the 14-time statement given out by President Trump over the span of last
I want to understand
year.
from you. Mahima
Is
saying,
that enough, Shivani? Is that enough for you?
No, that's what I'm asking. Given what Donald Trump has said, and he has said it repeatedly, nobody can deny that. India has consistently maintained that this is not what happened. The Prime Minister has had a direct conversation with his counterpart in the US now and has reiterated it. I don't think much else can be done. Nothing else can take back Donald Trump's claims. It cannot be erased.
Okay. I mean, you can keep on believing the Prime Minister, and you can few days ago, all the news channels were actually denying the claims that Asim Munir has been invited. Now he is being hosted at the moment. And there is General Michael Kurilla of the US. He's the Central Command Chief of the US. He goes on and says, Pakistan, a phenomenal partner in counter-terrorism operations. Is that not a failed Indian diplomacy?
Ma'am,
Is
I'll
that
come
not
to
a
that. I have
failed-
myself mentioned the fact that the US is mollycoddling Pakistan, which is a state sponsor of terrorism. I've listed out the reasons, which are historical reasons for the US. We thought maybe after their pullout from Afghanistan, things could change, but it certainly doesn't look like it. I'll discuss that separately. But I started with the discussion on what Trump claimed versus what India has now again put on the record. My point only was that Trump has said what he has said. He may again say what he has said. This is not a battle that we should get into. There's nothing else that can be said by India. Why doesn't the opposition trust the Indian Army's version? Because it's not just the government, it's not just the MEA. Indian DGMOs have come out and said that this is what happened.
And I hope you heard the chief of the army the chief of the forces when he spoke, in Singapore. I hope you heard when he spoke about Rafale. I hope you heard the countering statements.
Shivani, how do you like all this falsehood?
I hope you understand. I hope you understand what it means when a US president keeps on
sponsoring fakery.
But ma'am, you're not answering the question I'm asking. What the chief said about Rafale is not in dispute at all. We're not debating that at all. I'm only saying the Congress party has been going on and on about this mediation issue and even the leverage so-called of trade being used. There has to be a stop to this. When the government has reiterated it repeatedly, you weren't believing it. Now the PM has said it directly to his counterpart. What else can be done? But anyways, I've given you time on that. I'll go, ma'am, please. Ma'am, I request you. I'll come back to you. RP Singh, the opposition doesn't seem satisfied, on this issue, but they're saying there are other issues to discuss. Why don't you take the opposition into confidence, call that joint session and, do a discussion on what happened during Operation Sindoor?
Well, Shivani, I'm shocked you allowed a fake lead to be spread all through your channel. I mean, the lady said that Donald Trump, the White House, had issued a different statement. The fact is, Mr. Jairam Ramesh himself has eaten his word and said, I'm sorry for it. But the lady still continues the same statement.
I'll send your team, please play it out.
Okay, let's not interrupt each other. Yes, RP Singh, go ahead.
No, I will not allow lie mongering here. Shivani, he is countering what I said. He is
alleging heard you. Allow him the same courtesy. You will have your opportunity again.
Please play it on your screen if you can.
I'm not sure what are you objecting to?
The BJP spokesperson just said that I may be making a false claim. I am reading out from a Washington DC's website readout. Yes. And the BJP spokesperson seems to be totally unaware, totally, ignorant.
You're saying that the US statement on the conversation did not say what the Indian statement says. That's not out of the blue. That's what happens routinely. Both country statements can often not be very, similar. Yes, but anyways, I'll take that point to RP Singh. I'll take that point to RP Singh. Let's please allow each other to speak so that I don't run out of time. Yes, RP Singh, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Shivani, when you have bad face, it's difficult to, ugly face, it's difficult to see a mirror. And it's very problematic for Congress spokesperson to see a mirror. That's the problem. When their fakery was caught today itself in the morning when Jairam Ramesh took his words back. And she can keep saying what she wants to say. Till yesterday they were saying, why don't Prime Minister say so? Why don't, there's no official statement. We're not reverting back Donald Trump. Man, there's a complete statement being issued by the Ministry of External Affairs. And they don't believe in Ministry of External Affairs. Man, there's an official statement being issued by the government of India and by the Ministry of External Affairs of what transpired between Prime Minister Modi ji and Donald Trump. But they don't need to believe that because they believe in fake news and running fake news only. And then
RP Singh, away from those mediation claims, etc., do you think that the government domestically needs to engage more with the opposition? They have some queries, they have questions, they want more answers. Domestically, at least, we can indulge with each other?
Another 2 weeks, there will be a parliament session. And everyone will have the right to ask anything in the parliament session. One. Secondly, just recently, all party leaders were briefed about each and everything. That's how they went and represented the country. Man, if they don't have dialogue with their party leaders, then God bless them. If they don't want to talk to Shashi Tharoor, we can't help them. They don't want to talk to Manish Tiwari ji. God help them. And they don't want to talk to Anand Sharma ji or Salman Khurshid ji. God help them. That's the problem with them. That they don't believe in what is being briefed to their party leaders or Sardar Amar Singh ji for that regard. When they can talk to them, they can call them. But Rahul Gandhi is, I'm sorry, Rahul Gandhi is not in country. So he's busy with his personal affairs. So for him, this is not a priority. And otherwise, by another 2 weeks, you will come to know about everything.
Okay, I just do want to ask some of our other guests who are also. Mahima Singh, I'll come back to you. If you're pointing out the differences in the focus of the two country statements, let me bring in Rajiv Dogra in on that. That's not unusual, isn't it, Mr. Dogra? Each country highlights what it wants to highlight from any bilateral meeting or conversation or chat.
Well, let's go about it step by step. Firstly, when leaders, a prime minister from one side, president from the other side, when they talk on telephone, the conversation is recorded by both sides. So, if one country puts out a falsehood, it will be immediately contradicted by the other side.
Yes.
So, on that, there should be no doubt at all that when Indian side has given out a statement, and in fact, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri addressed a press conference, addressed the media which was present then in Canada, and point by point he read out what actually happened and what was Prime Minister's response. I think it will just be a waste of time if we keep on doubting the Foreign Secretary of India and keep on doubting what Prime Minister told the President of United States.
Precisely the point I was making. We can't keep going on and on, just saying that this is not what happened, this is what happened. This is what India has said. This is what the Prime Minister's official conversation with Donald Trump now is. Let's point to the fact also, Rajiv Dogra, that actually Trump didn't have this conversation. There's no recorded call between Trump and Narendra Modi after J.D. Vance's call. So they've never been able to establish when is it that Donald Trump used trade? When is it that he mediated a ceasefire?
Well, I don't think we should give too much of importance to what Donald Trump says in the morning and then contradicts in the afternoon. We should go by what our Prime Minister has said and what our Foreign Secretary has said on record. That should be the last word. The second thing is we have to understand the context. The context from our point of view, India's point of view, is the developing situation in the world.
Yes.
And the developing situation is the seriousness of what is happening in our near neighborhood, which means Iran. That's something which would affect us in multiple ways, including oil prices. But besides that, there were already indications, and someone mentioned about the commander of the Central Command, the American commander, and his statement in I think the American Senate or Congress, where he praised Pakistan to the skies. The purpose was America was preparing for certain benefits or certain facilities from Pakistan because they were seeing the situation develop in the way it has developed now at that time only. So Munir is another issue that has been cropping up from time to time. Once again, the invitation to Munir was not from yesterday. It was also in the background of what they wanted Munir to say yes to in terms of Iran. So there's a larger game which is playing on, and that is why Prime Minister's message to Trump was blunt, clear, and very firm. And
Yes.
that is how it should be. It reminds me of the conversation Mrs. Gandhi had with Nixon and Kissinger just before the Bangladesh crisis. She was bold, she was firm, and she stood her ground. Similarly, I'm glad Prime Minister has spoken in the way Foreign Secretary has described it, and that is how a big country like India should speak. So I think the matters should, on this issue,
Should
rest
absolutely
there.
end
I
here.
have no
Absolutely.
interest in politics.
No, absolutely. That is the point here. It has to end. It cannot be used and flogged. A dead horse cannot be flogged endlessly just for domestic politics. And I really seriously doubt if the Congress party is earning any points when it is harping on this issue. Let me also point out that till now, the Americans have not rejected what India has said. India has said this hours ago, that this is what we told Donald Trump in that conversation. America hasn't rejected it.
Said 14 times. Shivani, if we were to go by your logic, did Mr. Modi reject what Trump went on to say for 41 days?
He doesn't.
Did
He's
Are
Mr.
you
just
hard
laughing.
of hearing, man?
America should have,
Are you hard
so
of hearing
America
yourself?
should
Can I ask for some
got
machine
out
for you
of
here?
that. America
The
should have
Ministry of External
concluded
Affairs issued a statement
what
on
Trump
record,
is saying,
and you don't want to read that. You don't want to hear that.
We are to believe a singular
You
narrative.
need some Chinese
that
machine.
America should
Probably
have-
you need some
America
Chinese
has to
machine.
be
Hearing
the world
it.
for over the past 41 days.
No,
Now
ma'am,
the
I
BJP
don't understand. The Indian Prime Minister doesn't need to respond every time somebody says this. I'm seriously
Wow,
not
what a
understanding the
double
track of this.
standard right
The
here,
Indian
Shivani.
DGMOs, the Foreign
Shivani,
Ministry, the
right
Foreign
here.
Secretary,
Hold
the
on.
External Affairs Minister have
What
all
could be
said
more
the same
audacious?
thing. When the Prime Minister got the opportunity
Shivani.
to speak to his
Shivani,
counterpart,
what
he
could
said
be-
it. No,
What
I'm sorry,
could
but
be more audacious?
we have to
You are
discuss the
very
facts
sure you are
of the matter.
contradicting your own self.
Mahima ji,
You're
we have to
contradicting your
discuss
own
the
self,
facts of the
Shivani.
matter. Are you denying the facts of the
Shivani, you
matter?
are
How it
contradicting
happened,
your
when
own
it happened is
self.
inconsequential. Are you
are-
denying
Shivani,
that the Prime
Shivani,
Minister
are you
told
listening
Donald
yourself?
Trump
Are you
this?
listening to
That's the
yourself?
basic question.
Are you even listening to yourself, Shivani?
Yes,
You just
I'm listening to
contradicted
myself. I'm very
yourself on
confident
your
of what
own
I'm saying.
No.
I don't
You
think the
are
Congress party is very
contradicting your own
confident of what it's
statement on your
saying.
own show. On your own show,
You've been
just
reading
now
out
you said-
old statements
just
of the
now you
White
said
House.
that Americans have not contradicted what Modi said. Just now on your show, you said that Americans have not contradicted what Modi said.
Yes.
So you are inferring something. Similarly, India did not contradict what Trump said for 41 days.
That's not true, we did.
Not the way you did. No, he did not. When did Prime Minister Modi come out
No,
and
I'm not
say-
getting into this
When
debate
did
with you if Prime Minister
come
did
out
it or
and
not.
say
I
what
don't
Trump
find this a very
said?
fruitful
No.
debate. But I want to go across to Major General Bishambar
Shivani,
Dayal
before
as
you
well.
go on, please, small point. Can I make a small point, Shivani?
Yes, Major General, please, I request your patience for one more minute. Yes.
Do you remember Obama sahab? And he said that Manmohan Singh ji told him that he is not allowing the Air Force to take action because the country will the BJP will be benefited, or the RSS will be benefited out of the national foray which will happen in the country.
Does the
Man,
BJP
this is the state of affairs.
What he's speaking about? I don't think he has clarity of thought. He is
Okay,
speaking
I want to go
something
across to Major General Bishambar Dayal. I want to discuss with him the concerns that India should have legitimately when it comes to these signals that US establishment is sending to India. You know, the US's general statement on how crucial Pakistan is and what a great partner it has been in its anti-terrorism approach, plus the White House lunch invite to this failed field marshal today. There is, of course, something to be concerned about.
Shivani, thank you firstly. I think I'm coming to your show after a very, very long time.
Thank you, sir.
And let me start with one issue that, look, I think as an army person or as a Fauji, I'm very clear that America is not our adversary. He's our strategic partner. God's sake, let's not forget that our adversary is Pakistan. Our adversary is China. Right? Let's not compete with Pakistan and destroy our relationship with America. We have taken 25 years to build relationship with America. We have invested hugely. So let's not by all these things spoil the relationship. I personally feel that whatever has happened, let it just rest, because more we are discussing, more we are coming out, more vague statements we make, more political parties, people for their diplomatic, for their domestic, audience, they come out and speak all sorts of language. Trump is lying, so and so is lying. God's sake, stop it. Look at the Vice President of America. He rung up our Prime Minister on the 9th. Let's go over the chronological of the events. On the 9th, strike has not taken place, and he has informed us. Actually, he has physically given a war secret of Pakistan that tonight Pakistan will attack.
Yes.
So India was fully alert. We defeated his missiles, we defeated his airstrikes, and we then counterattacked with our missile strike and destroyed 8 to 9 airfields. So he in fact helped us. So please, we look at it from militarily. It is a cause of concern because of our domestic politics, because of our domestic trying to, either all of us are trying to win local domestic and we are spoiling our foreign policy. That is the result today Mureen is sitting there. That is the result today because after 20 years of investment in strategic partnership, giving everything to America, buying his Chinook, buying technologies from him. Today we are technologically, militarily dependent on him on certain arms and ammunition. So let's not spoil it. I am of the opinion it is a matter of great concern and it should be handled very deftly, very diplomatically. Let's not embarrass our own Prime Minister and let's not also embarrass Mr. Trump. He's the President of America, yeah. By everybody is calling him a liar. Everybody is coming and saying he's misguiding. Let it be. He may be doing something for his domestic audience. Let him do it. How does it help us? How does it? What concern is that if America and Pakistan come together, if America and India get distance, what happens to Quad? What happens to our overall strategy against China? Those are the issues today.
No, absolutely.
What happens to India growing in stature?
In that sense, do you believe
So,
that
Shivani, there are larger issues which I think the domestic population, domestic people must understand that, look, the political parties just trying to appease the domestic audience for their vote bank are trying to ruin our foreign policy. And I am of the opinion that even our foreign ministry is making few mistakes. It must take a course correction. President and the Prime Minister have discussed, wait, let them, they've discussed, that means they've sorted out the issue amongst themselves if there were some differences. Let Prime Minister Modi reach out to President Trump, let him win over, let him come for Quad, let's invite him. We are neither with China, with Russia, nor with America completely. Where do we want to go? India is still not technologically that sound. Militarily, we still need, we have got 90% of Air Force from Russia. 80% of our navy is from Russia. 80% of our tanks from Russia. We've got some valuable technologies from America. We are developing, we are emerging. We will take time to emerge as a strong country, both militarily and diplomatically.
No, but sir, I want to ask you. I want to ask you.
Path and let's not spoil the relationship.
I want to ask you, but it's not really
Yes.
India that wanted to spoil that relationship. Certain criticism of America here is justified with the manner in which Donald Trump made those statements, and he's the one who's responsible for kind of breaking the momentum of the upwardly mobile
Donald
India-US
Trump did not directly speak. Shivani, Donald Trump did not speak directly to our Prime Minister before this.
Yes.
The Vice President spoke, right? And India didn't, India never declared an all-out war. India on the 7th morning said, we have finished with our political and our military aim. That was our aim, to strike at the terrorist camps and strike it so hard that they lose, terrorists die. And we didn't want to cause any civilian damage. We did not go on war. We went on a anti-terrorist strikes. India declared, if Pakistan doesn't retaliate, we will not escalate. We continue to maintain this. Imagine we showed patience on 7th, 8th night. We showed patience on 8th, 9th night. It is, and both days Pakistan kept jumping. It is only on 9th, 10th night when Pakistan came out heavily, we sorted him out. And thereafter, it's a matter of Pakistan must have gone to America, no. American must have spoken to Pakistan, no. So, President has been given a feedback that we have sorted it out and we have told Pakistan that the DGMO must speak to the DGMO of the Indian Army. The DGMO of the Pakistan doesn't have to speak to anybody. He had to go to the air and say, look, we are not going to attack anymore India. India was in any case saying that we will not escalate. If you don't strike, we will not strike.
I want to give 30 seconds to Rajiv
So
Dogra as
all
well.
this is being complicated by statesmen to ruin our relationship with America.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
There is a drive to. I don't know whether the nation
you're
understands or
suggesting
not, but
we need not give this any more fuel. We need not go down this path. Rajiv Dogra, I've got limited time.
Nothing. We have sorted
I've got
out.
limited time. I want to ask you, are you concerned with this invite to Asim Munir to the White House? The optics of it certainly not something India likes.
Certainly concerned, very well concerned.
Absolutely.
So counter it how? Not counter it by calling the president putting him on the back foot.
Yes.
Not putting the nation on the back foot. It is a matter of concern. we should diplomatic matters are resolved diplomatically. We have no war at Pakistan.
Okay.
with
Major General, I
America.
just want to allow Rajiv Dogra 30 seconds on that as well. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Your sense on it.
Well, a lot has been said and a lot I don't agree with, because diplomacy is not a question of 2 plus 2 is 4, and America is no friend of anyone, including its closest allies in Europe, who are suffering because of America. So let's not sing praises for America. There were two issues that this program started with. Number one, where the Prime Minister made his point clearly and forcefully. I fully endorse that proposal, that he made his point fully, forcefully and clearly. Nothing could have been better than that.
Okay.
Second is the invitation to Munir. Yes, we should be concerned, because past record shows that every major Pakistani delegation which goes to America, if there is a list of 10 points, 9 points are against India.
Yeah.
And Munir is not going to be any different, because he is a failed marshal, as you put it, in Pakistani eyes, domestic eyes. So he has to prove something.
Okay.
And the only way he can prove something is if he can extract something out of America against India, or if he can get their support for his plans against India.
Okay.
So
but why is
that-
America
that
indulging
is
in
the
this? And why are
final
they
word on this.
why are they willing to upset India to appease Pakistan at this stage? We have, of course, showed you some of the reasons, but something needs to be set right here, because India certainly shouldn't stand up for this. I do thank all of our guests for joining us. Moving on, how long should you work each week? That debate has been reignited by Karnataka government's recent proposal to amend the Karnataka Shops and Commercial Establishment Act 1961. Proposed changes include increase in daily work hours. The proposal suggests increasing daily work hours from 9 to 10 hours. It also proposes raising the quarterly overtime limit from 50 to 144 hours, and the total number of hours, including overtime, not to exceed 12 in a day. Proponents, including the Federation of Karnataka Chambers of Commerce and Industries, argue that the changes will boost productivity and align with national directives. Trade unions and employee groups, though, particularly in the IT sector, strongly oppose the proposal, citing concerns over work-life balance. Now, remember, this issue has divided the business and the entrepreneurial world in India for quite long. Business leaders like L&T chairperson S.N. Subramaniam had talked about how if you want to be at the top, you have to work 90 hours a week. Infosys co-founder was one of the first to kickstart this debate when he said that he used to work 85 to 90 hours till he retired. But not all agree. Like Anand Mahindra of Mahindra Group feels quality of work is more important, not quantity. Harsh Goenka feels longer hours is a recipe for burnout, while Namita Thapar of MQ Pharmaceuticals felt that this is fine for founders and stakeholders, but not really for the common workforce. The debate has been raging even in the Indian film industry recently, with Deepika Padukone wanting reduced work hours reportedly. Now, Kajol has said that she loves the fact that we could work less. Husband Ajay Devgan said that 8 to 9 hour work shift is reasonable and increasingly accepted. Saif Ali Khan says that real success is actually being able to spend time with your family. While Jinilya Deshmukh said 10-hour shifts are not impossible, but it depends on the person concerned. So is this 10-hour workday really feasible? I spoke to brand guru Harish Bijur on the issue. Let me take that to Harish Bijur also, who's joining us. Harish, your thoughts on what is being proposed. Is this really about productivity?
Well, firstly, the Shops and Establishments, Commercial Establishments Act 1961 is a very old act. And I think it's being put up by the government for a discussion at this point of time. So I think in this discussion, is a very appropriate point of time where you can put up your thoughts and views. And I'm sure this program is going to add to it as well. But whether it's right or wrong, I think there's no one clear answer. Because please note, there are 4 elements which actually help you run a business. One is land, the other is labor, there's capital, and then there's entrepreneurship. Now, when it comes to labor, there are 2 kinds of labor, or many colors of labor, many shades of labor. So there's a white-collar worker, and a white-collar worker depends on productivity, which is a mind productivity of a different nature. Then there's a brown-collar worker, and the brown-collar worker is possibly of a different caliber. And then there is, of course, a blue-collar worker. Now, across these segments, this law and rule will apply differentially. Because must you work 8 hours or 9 hours? Does that 9 hour add a dimension to it all? I think that's only going to be proven over time. There are some categories, particularly in the categories which depend on hand and foot labor. I mean, where labor is physical. There, an hour matters one hell of a lot. And therefore, I would just like to say one thing, which is the dimension of this law must be, are we talking about allowed to work for 9 hours? Are we talking about must work for 9 hours? Or are we talking about you're forced to work for 9 hours? Whatever it is, the choice and the option must be left to the employee. And whether it be an IT worker or a worker in a shop, a kirana shop, because we're a nation of small shops, they're peopled by labor. I think, the option must be left with people. At the end of the day, last line would be every hour of work must be paid for. And therefore, if somebody is working 9 hours, pay for those 9 hours. If he's working 8 hours, pay for those 8 hours. Once the money goes out of the pocket of the entrepreneur, he understands the value of that additional money. And
but also,
the labor also
Harish,
benefits.
if we talk about these labor-intensive, industries where 1 hour of work is extremely beneficial to an employer, you look at our MSME sectors, for example, they are still largely unorganized. They're not in the organized sector.
That is where I have a little bit of a problem because, we're talking about 64 million MSMEs in this country, and that's a large segment. This law seems to want to, allow a huge percentage of that not to come under the ambit of it. If you say that, employees below 20 or employees below 10 will not be under the ambit of this law, that's not fair because the biggest exploitation happens in the smallest of outfits. So it might be on paper that you can work in a shop for 8 hours, but a boy actually ends up working 12 hours.
Exactly.
Without getting remunerated for it. So the thing is, it's all in the spirit of the implementation. Are you going to say that, somebody is going to come in and sign an attendance register, sign in and sign out at the same time, saying every day 8 hours? I mean, that's not reality. And implementing something like this across a nation of MSMEs is a very, very difficult task. So I think it's really that key question. Are you allowed to work 9 hours? That is, shops can employ people, one person for 9 hours, no problem. Not only 8 hours. That's different. Must work for 9 hours. Now that's not okay.
Yeah, we're talking
You're
even 10
forced to
hours
work.
now.
Not okay. Not okay. So I think, these dimensions need to be considered. Yeah.
The other aspect also is if you talk to entrepreneurs or businessmen or the business industry per se, one of their prickly points has been land laws. Yes, labor laws is also an issue that has been pending for a very long time. So if you look at holistically, you can't just look at labor laws now in these ways of increasing 1 hour work hours here and there if you don't solve the other problems that businesses need.
Yeah, I agree with you. But, I really hope that, we are addressing each of these. We are addressing the land laws, the labor laws, the capital laws, and the laws that govern entrepreneurs and what they can do and what they can't do. So I think all these need to be addressed. Maybe we are doing it piecemeal at this point of time. At the end of the day, a law of this kind either ends up harassing the business or ends up harassing the labor.
Yeah.
Now, we need to take a balance on that. Okay.
Let me ask you, since we are talking about Karnataka, we are talking about, let's say, a city like Bengaluru. We've seen in the past the likes of Narayan Murthy and others advocate for longer working hours. They've talked about the toil that it takes to build a career or to build businesses that they have been through, and they certainly have a certain point of view. Do you think that has in some ways influenced the government as well? Is this particularly focused on those, white-collar jobs?
Well, I don't think this law has been influenced in any manner by what Mr. N.R. Narayan Murthy had to say. Because, at the end of the day, NRN has built the entire ecosystem of IT in India, basis the sheer blood, sweat and tears that not only he, but his entire enterprise gave to this nation. So I think when NRN speaks about it, he speaks about it with passion. And I think this law has nothing to do with that. And I think we're really talking about a labor force at a different end of the spectrum. And a city like Bangalore, I agree with you. Yeah. In fact, it makes me smile because, commute itself takes about an hour and 20 minutes up, hour and 20 minutes down. That's 2 hour, 40-minute gone. And that's a lot of hours. That's, those are hours which could be valuably spent with family or working out a work-life balance that's better. I think we need to aim for it. But at this point of time, working in a city is not as joyful as working in a village.
Yeah.
And I hope people understand that statement and possibly rethink their work priorities when you think of the big city. Okay.
In fact, moving on, the big story that we also continue to track, the conflict between Iran and Israel that has intensified significantly, with US President Trump making certain threatening statements against the supreme leader of Iran. Trump claimed that the US now has complete and total control of the skies over Iran and referred to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as an easy target, but added that they're not going to take him out just yet. Khamenei has warned of irreparable consequences if the US joins Israeli strikes against Iran and has rejected Trump's call for an unconditional surrender. Now, the issue of attack on Iran also has a special social aspect, that of its own people, especially women's fight against the anti-women and anti-freedom regime. Many Iranians support the overthrow of the supreme leader. I spoke to Iranian-American Jew Dr. Human Hamati, who fled Iran as a child and backs Israel's action.
I want to begin by asking you about the tweets that you made in the aftermath of the Israeli strikes on Friday. I want to quote just a part of the tweet that you sent out. And you said, "Tonight, as I watched the news of Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, I felt a surge of hope, not for the destruction itself, but for the first glimmer of freedom for the people trapped under a government that gouges out women's eyes for their clothes and tortures dissidents for daring to think differently." Can I begin by asking you about your birth, your childhood in Iran, and why do you feel so strongly about what's happening today?
Absolutely, Shivani, and thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. It's an issue that's very close to my heart, and it's very close to the hearts of so many Iranians and Iranian Americans, as well as Iranians. It's inside of Iran and elsewhere. I was born in Iran pre-revolution, at a time when Iran was almost a westernized sort of nation, an advanced culture, one that really celebrated art and music and intellectual freedom, one that produced poetry, fashion, where women were free to do anything they want, where people had freedom of speech for the most part, and where people were free to express themselves and be who they wanted to be. The revolution, which occurred when I was just a handful of years old, shattered all of that. It was something that was sold to many of the youth in the nation as something that would elevate them and create new opportunities. But as we know, it destroyed opportunities for basically everyone. And it caused my family to flee, because we're religious minorities as Jewish people, but so many others, even Muslim people who didn't want to practice that type of more radical Islam that was imposed on everyone, similarly suffered. And now you have a population of people who has been suffering under a very oppressive regime for close to 5 decades. These are some of the smartest people on earth. These are people who remain very well educated, people who have a thirst for freedom, a thirst for self-expression, but who are physically and emotionally repressed at every turn. Plus, they have a government that prioritizes exporting terror to other countries over their own well-being and prosperity. And this is something that simply can't continue. And so when I wrote that, that came from my heart. It came out of really a hope that the people inside of Iran will be liberated from the people who are oppressing them and have been oppressing them for so many decades.
But what makes you confident that most of the Iranians today, including the majority Muslims, don't really like this regime? What makes you confident of that?
Yeah, it's actually pretty clear cut. First, the messages being posted online, the ones that get through, are overwhelmingly in support of what's happening against the Iranian regime. Remember, it's not against the people, it's against the regime. And second, when you look at what happened when Israel responded in Gaza to the October 7th attacks, within moments, within at least a day or so, there were large protests in the US by Muslim, Arab Americans, Palestinians, in opposition to what was happening, even though it was a defensive operation. There was a direct attack by Gaza. There were calls of genocide, etc. You have a much larger Iranian population in the United States than you do Palestinian American. And guess what? There has not been one single protest. Why? Why is there that silence? Why is there support quietly and even in public? It's because this is not an offensive war. This is one where there are multiple goals, the nuclear program being one, but from the Iranian perspective, the people, it is one of liberation. It's one of being freed from the oppression that is happening through this current regime, one that will torture or kill women simply for not covering their hair sufficiently, one that will gouge a woman's eyes out if they wear eye makeup. This is lunacy. And I think they have a real desire to join the modern world, to rejoin the modern world. This is a country that was there at one point, even if people weren't alive at that time. And Iran is a very young country, right? So many people in their 20s and younger, disproportionate to many other countries, right? Even though it's so young and people didn't experience pre-revolution Iran, they know what happened, and now through the internet get to see what it's like everywhere else. And they're educated enough to understand what their country can be and what their lives can be like if they had some freedom and prosperity. And I think that's what all of them aspire to.
You know, there has been some statements made by both Israel and US that suggest that a regime change is something that they could be working on. Khamenei, the supreme leader, Israel hasn't denied that he's one of their targets or is on their target. Are you hoping that that would be one of the objectives achieved?
It would be very nice to see the regime change. That would be an amazing goal to occur. But I think we also have to be very realistic. Throughout that region, nearly every time that we have attempted to achieve regime change through outside military force, the change has sometimes been worse than what occurred before the change occurred. And right, and it creates a leadership vacuum, it creates chaos, and it creates an opportunity for a violent insurgency, much of which may be elements of the current regime that go into hiding, have access to weaponry and money and people, and then rise up against whatever the new leadership is. And so I think it's naive to think that you get an automatic flip overnight where you have a new regime immediately installed and things are peaceful and happy. That said, for regime change to occur, it needs to be organic. It needs to come from within the people, and it will simply take time. And will be a period of sacrifice and a period of difficulty, and that I think we have to accept is the likely outcome of any regime change. But in the end, remember, Iran is not a country that for hundreds of years or its entire history has lived through violent dictatorships. This is a country that has only been under this level of oppression for over 4 decades, period. This is a group of people and an infrastructure and a culture that is accustomed to governing itself responsibly and in a way that promotes the prosperity and the happiness of its people. And so if it's just such a short period of time that they've been under this, it's easier to go back than if they never had that to begin with. And I think that's what really creates this opportunity today.
Yeah. Finally, you also said, let the world hear this. Iran must never, under any circumstance, be allowed to hold a nuclear arsenal. A regime that flogs teenage girls for posting a dance video would not hesitate to unleash devastation on its neighbors. Stand with Israel tonight. There has been by and large support, or at least an understanding of why Israel needed to do this. But there has been criticism as well of what they have done. How would you respond to this criticism? Why is Israel the righteous one here?
Absolutely. It's a very good question. And I think the answer is very clear when you look at the mentality of the Iranian regime. This is a theocracy, not a democracy or a republic of any sort. These are people who are driven by messianic nihilism, by a death wish almost. People the government, I'm not talking about the people, but it is led by a group of people who welcome and embrace their own death as a positive outcome. They believe that will rise them to a higher level. And so when you have people who not only do not fear death, but welcome their own death, that makes it very likely that they will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons, which would create what's called mutually assured destruction, including, again, their own. These are folks who have a deranged ideology where their own death is welcome. And when they do, and when they have proven time and time again that they are willing to go after their own citizens, forget even Israel, when they're willing to go after their own citizens, young girls who simply wear makeup or don't cover their heads sufficiently where a strand of hair is showing, or who post something online that may be offensive to them, young couples holding hands and kissing in public, for example, is enough to be jailed or tortured for. This sort of behavior, when you see it, shows you the mentality of the regime in Iran.
Brought to you. This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Siddhant, that is the big statement that's coming in from the Foreign Secretary. Important aspects that have been underlined. Vikram Misri has gone on to put it on record that Prime Minister Narendra Modi did take up the US intervention as far as the conversation between India and Pakistan is concerned. He reiterated how India doesn't accept any third-party involvement when it is about their relationship between India and Pakistan and dealing with whatever is happening between the two countries. And that is the highlight from this conversation. Just tell us more.
Well, that's right. In fact, this is the first time Prime Minister Modi has spoken to President Trump after Operation Sindoor. In fact, as Foreign Secretary rightly pointed out, that the last conversation happened between the two leaders only after Pahalgam terror attack. And in fact, this is the first conversation to Prime Minister Modi, perhaps explained to President Trump the context under which India targeted terror camps in POJK and Pakistan. In fact, Prime Minister Modi also told President Trump and thanked him for extending support to India right after the Pahalgam terror attack. In fact, Prime Minister Modi, this is what Foreign Secretary said, that when Vice President Vance called Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor, and in fact Vice President Vance told Prime Minister Modi that Pakistan is planning a big attack on India, to which Prime Minister Modi replied to Vice President Vance that if Pakistan will do a big attack, then we will also retaliate in a powerful way. And in fact, Prime Minister Modi explained this to President Trump, that then India gave a powerful reply to Pakistan on the intervening night of 9th and 10th of May. PM Modi told President Trump very clearly, in all this, never ever trade was discussed. PM Modi also told President Trump, India had never accepted mediation. India will never accept mediation. In fact, President Trump understood Prime Minister Modi's viewpoint. In fact, Prime Minister Modi also extended invitation to President Trump to visit India for the Quad summit later this year, which President Trump has accepted. In fact, President Trump invited Prime Minister Modi to visit United States. In fact, President Trump said this to Prime Minister Modi, that if he could come to United States for a brief visit so that both leaders can sit and talk before returning to India, to which Prime Minister Modi told President Trump that since he already has scheduled a program in Croatia, he is going to United States, but both leaders will definitely look for an opportunity to meet as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
So
35 minutes conversation. One more thing that has been said by Vikram Misri, and Sanjay, I'd like your inputs on this, that the Vice President, J.D. Vance, was the one who in fact spoke to Prime Minister Narendra Modi post the Pahalgam attack. He mentioned of some sort of an imminent attack by Pakistan, to which Prime Minister Modi had very, very clearly said that India's response is going to be lethal. That also is rather significant, Sanjay.
Yes, a quick thought before we come to that. I think it's quite significant, the very fact that this call was made. And we are not done with the G7 yet.
Yes.
There was to have been a bilateral between Trump and Modi. That was missed for circumstantial reasons. President Trump left. But before the G7 is done, the White House made it sure that there would be a conversation. Typically, conversations and meetings here at the G7 have been slotted 35 minutes, a lot of them. And this call we just heard from the Foreign Secretary was 35 minutes. So that keenness from the US, keenness from Trump, that yes, we must have this call with Modi. The second thing that's quite remarkable, although it's almost a throwaway remark that Trump appears to have made, is if Modi has not left Canada, which is next door to where the president is, if he can come to the US. Now that is quite an unusual expression of keenness and a quite unusual invitation that's very spontaneous. But I think it's quite telling. It all adds up to a great keenness to hear from Modi and to speak with him. So once that, of course, is established, then through the course of the call we do hear now about Vance. So there was an attempt at, call it mediation, call it an attempt to reach a ceasefire, call it an attempt to prevent escalation. That came from the Vice President and not from Trump himself. Is the team really at the top of the US government? But that does make things clear, because this area has been a bit clouded for a while now. Whether it is President Trump who intervened to end the hostilities, or whether it was directly done, we have a very clear statement now from the government that it was between Pakistan and India at the military level that this was agreed. Of course, with political backing. It was not President Trump himself, but it was the Vice President who intervened in some way, in some capacity, not exactly as thought.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Siddhant, that is the big statement that's coming in from the Foreign Secretary. Important aspects that have been underlined. Vikram Misri has gone on to put it on record that Prime Minister Narendra Modi did take up the US intervention as far as the conversation between India and Pakistan is concerned. He reiterated how India doesn't accept any third-party involvement when it is about their relationship between India and Pakistan and dealing with whatever is happening between the two countries. And that is the highlight from this conversation. Just tell us more.
Well, that's right. In fact, this is the first time Prime Minister Modi has spoken to President Trump after Operation Sindoor. In fact, as Foreign Secretary rightly pointed out, that the first conversation the last conversation happened between the two leaders only after Pahalgam terror attack. And in fact, this is the first conversation to Prime Minister Modi, perhaps explained to President Trump the context under which India targeted terror camps in POJK and Pakistan. In fact, Prime Minister Modi also told President Trump and thanked him for extending support to India right after the Pahalgam terror attack. In fact, Prime Minister Modi, this is what Foreign Secretary said, that when Vice President Vance called Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor, and in fact Vice President Vance told Prime Minister Modi that Pakistan is planning a big attack on India, to which Prime Minister Modi replied to Vice President Vance that if Pakistan will do a big attack, then we will also retaliate in a powerful way. And in fact, Prime Minister Modi explained this to
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. The 35-minute long telephonic conversation between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump actually has clarified several issues regarding the weaponizing of a trade deal that was claimed by Donald Trump, and also Uncle Sam's role in mediating the ceasefire or the pause in Operation Sindoor. Now, on a phone call on Wednesday on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Canada, Prime Minister Narendra Modi told President Trump that Bharat neither